folks, you're very welcome to another one of our Valentine's Covid Lonely Hearts Club interviews in the run-up to Valentine's Day, or around Valentine's Day this year. I suppose we're doing these interviews to highlight the fact that the last 2 years have been very challenging, not necessarily in relation to the hearts and flowers or those romantic relationships in our lives, but the broader relationships and the connections that we have in our lives. So today we're very lucky to have Jim Bolger. Jim, thank you very much for giving your time to meet with us. Jim is chairman of the Carlow GAA, and I suppose Jim is a man of a certain age, like us all, with a certain following, and it's great to have a man happy to talk to us about the challenges that COVID have faced. So Jim, I suppose you work through the GAA, you're out and about, you're meeting people. The GAA, all sports have been decimated during COVID. What did you find the hardest in terms of dealing with COVID?
Well, I suppose we're so used to it and we're so lucky, and it's probably something we took for granted, is that we have, match programs on where we get people together. We have lots of teams training. We have 6 teams, apart from the underage, like as in our development squads. We've 3 hurling and 3 football from minor up to senior, and meeting people at matches, going and enjoying the matches. That's a very big part of our lives, and that keeps us going. And
but when that was pulled from you, it must have been very difficult.
It was a massive loss, and more or less to lock up our gates at the time was something that we weren't used to at all, and certainly affected us in a very big way. And I suppose many people, or much of our supporters, were affected as well.
Yes.
So even when we did get back, it was restricted and we couldn't bring people in, or indeed we had very small numbers coming in. So that really affected, but it affected players. And while we say players are physically, in great shape, it's a holistic thing, and the mental health is extremely important as well.
And the roar of the crowd.
The roar of the crowd, And it's such a big part of players' lives. They commit so much time to it that, to not have that in their lives, it's very hard to fill the void. And training on your own isn't just not the same when you're used to team sports. So that's
and when you think
affected.
of, probably young lads that give so much of their time to GA, there must have been huge gap lives as well.
There was, and meeting their friends, and that's, even meeting up, you get so used to coming to train a couple of times a week. And for young people to miss it, to not have that, it really did affect them. So we're probably connecting more through the phones and through playing PlayStations and phone, that kind of thing.
And that's what I was going to ask you, Jim. How did you look after, the GAA relationships, but all the other connections in your life? How did you manage those, or what did you have to do differently during COVID?
Well, GAA relationships for teams, we spoke to our management, our various management teams, and they came up with, I suppose, from even having quiz nights online, having meetings, and setting programs for individuals, and some of them then, when it was safe to do so, they worked in pods together, like maybe 5 or 6, and that was a help. And then there would be the social element, as I said, having full nights. We had people come in and talk about, our dietitian, nutritionist would talk online, and even for people leaving home for the first time, that age group going to college, when that was on, they prepared, showed them how to cook meals and fend for themselves when they were leaving, the home for the first time as such. So little initiatives like that helped along the way.
We all had to learn new skills, and there were some positives in it in that respect.
There was, and I suppose we had to adapt. And for myself, when I wasn't meeting people, that every Friday evening, for a couple of hours, a few of us would meet online and shoot the breeze then, and that was helpful. To say in the GAA world, we do funerals really well, and I suppose funerals became so impersonal, and for families not to be able to get in and visit their loved ones because of COVID, and then the support that the GAA normally gave at funeral time, it could be from car parking and stewarding to the support for the family, and they would probably play with different generations of people might have played together, and we'd know each other through sport as well. And it was difficult that we couldn't provide the support that we ordinarily would, and we found that very difficult. And thankfully now, society is opening up again, and we're back like that again. So that's a positive.
Great, and it's funny. I wouldn't have thought of that aspect of it, but as you say, the GAA, there's so much part of community and funerals, and all community life really,
Yeah.
especially in the rural community. So it's been a huge challenge.
Yeah. We are, I suppose, we're ingrained in every parish in Ireland at least, and further afield as well.
Yeah.
And we do like a lot of communities. The focal point within their communities is the GAA facility, clubhouse, field or whatever. And over many years, and even for people that didn't play, there's room for everybody in the GAA. So it could be from cutting the grass to washing the jerseys, or to doing the gate for us, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's a great source of support for community people that may not be playing, but we have administration, we have coaching, and they can get involved in different aspects or different facets. And of course we have the like the score then for musicians and so on. So we cater for quite a breadth from, I suppose, we also have rounders, football, hurling, and rounders is another example, and handball of course is another one. So they're all core part of the GAA,
Wouldn't have even thought of that breadth of activities, and when you think of everybody that's involved at the various levels in all of those, hasn't it been a huge loss?
It has been. It really did affect us, and I suppose for me, I think there's two cohorts: the young and the elderly. Then, of course, and for the young, I was thinking about the leaving certs where, are they going to do exams, or are they going to be assessed differently, and so on? All this turmoil, no debs,
That's right.
then nowhere to go in college, online courses in college. So they missed out on quite a lot. And to compound matters, no sport then from a GA perspective. So it was a very difficult time for them.
So would you say personally, Jim, would you have learned skills to cope during that, at a personal level, or what got you through it?
Yeah, well, I suppose there's advantages and disadvantages when we were in lockdown, because I'm a typical administrator in the GA where I'm going to meetings, going to matches, and I'm like an absentee husband stroke father, and that's the way it is. But my family are used to it, and that's the reality, And now, since when the lockdown came along, it afforded me an opportunity to reconnect with the family that I wouldn't have otherwise had, and that was very positive for me. I got presents of books over several Christmases that I just didn't have time, or I didn't make the time, I couldn't make the time, and I got back into reading, for example. And then I dusted down the bike, even though it doesn't look like it at the moment. For a while I have to get back on it again, and I found that good for my mental health, to get out cycling in the fresh air, and the sights and the sounds and even the smells of riding through it. And I found that very good for my mental health, never mind physically. So we're reading books, and even lots of them are sports books, but I had one on communications, and what I learned from that, or one takeaway certainly, is to actively listen to people when you're communicating. And I think that's certainly very well both in work and in my GA career, So I think it's important, and you can empathise more, and you can put yourself in the other person's shoes if you listen properly to them, and have empathy with their position,
And I suppose it's the one thing that we really need to do when someone is in trouble, and we've all been in trouble during COVID because we've been isolated and we've been challenged. So it's a great skill to have, to be able to listen and give people that time.
It is, and I suppose like ringing people on a weekly basis and even connecting with the Friday nights, I said, well, there wasn't much in the GA context happening. We had little to talk about in that sense, but we went off on different tangents, and it was good fun, and we might pick, an all-star team of guys over 6 foot, or small lads, or, really sporting players, and not so sporting teams as well. So to see what we pick, but we had good fun doing that,
And just listening to you, I'm sure you maybe got to know different aspects of the people that you knew through sport, and you knew all about them in that sphere of their life. You probably learned more about other parts of their life when you didn't have the sport to talk about.
And that was a positive, and we discovered things that they were doing that I never would have accused them of doing, if you like. So from gardening to cycling and other sports as well, swimming and so on like that, and even fishing.
I suppose it broadened your relationship
with them. Yes, it did. So it was good in that sense. And in the work setting, we were very conscious of people working from home and being isolated and not having the social contact. So we made sure that line managers contacted their teams weekly, you know, and we also sent out, I suppose, messages of support to them, you know, every now and then, and particularly in relation to mental health and to maybe getting some exercise and all. We found that all helpful as well. So any supports that we got some, I suppose, some material from mental health groups like your own as well to be able to send to employees and support them through a difficult time, because you're going from bed into the office environment in your own home. You're eating there, you're sleeping there, and you're working there. So it is difficult.
Boundaries in, isn't it?
It is.
One slips into another.
Exactly, you know, and it's nice to have the team support in work, and they miss that, you know. And meetings are not quite the same online, you know, as well.
That bit of banter, that bit of the smart comment, or the bit that makes it enjoyable.
Exactly. So people definitely miss that, and it has been a challenge for lots of people. But I think overall we coped very well, and even for the powers that be, I say they found it very difficult, because you had the clinicians on one side, medical people telling them to do one thing, and the business people on the other, saying how are you going to look after our sector. And it's not a nice place to be in, and overall I think we did well, in fairness. You know, so it was a challenging time, there's no doubt.
Right. But you got through it well.
We got through it well. We had to adapt, and, like, you know, as I said, small numbers, not using dressing rooms, which was difficult as well, because players get into their cars then, and we had water breaks because we couldn't share bottles and all of that. So stuff like that.
It sounds like as an organisation you dealt well with it, and at a personal level, those people involved, you conscious of your own mental health needs. So I suppose hopefully it's behind us, Jim, and
we hope so.
We'd hope so. And it's and I suppose Valentine's Day is looming in that. So what are you looking forward to now with the freedom? I suppose we probably appreciate the ability to come and go more a little bit, but what are you looking forward to?
When I look forward, we now can have full capacity crowds back to matches. That's great. You know, it's the mantra before and after games. The post-mortems are always great as well. But I think that everyone feels uplifted, you know, and it's great to have people. And we had a meeting last Thursday night, and we were able to bring in the club chairpersons and secretaries for the first time in over. And I thought that was great to have that, you know. So it's meeting people, re-engaging, and seeing people who were very nervous. You know, a lot of people are very nervous about coming out and mixing and so on like that. And I think that's brilliant, and it will help all of us and lift all of us in the future. So we'll provide the games, and hopefully things will keep going.
Build it and they will come.
Build it and they will come, that's right.
And the time of year, it's spring, you know, it's a new beginning, so it's lovely to have all that to look forward to.
Exactly, and while we're mindful that the restrictions are lifted, you know, COVID is still there, and we have to be conscious of that as well. And hopefully now, with, I suppose, the variant we're after having, that there's a possibility of herd immunity, or a lot more of that as well. You know, and a lot more people are, like, the uptake on the vaccines is fabulous as well.
And as a country, we've been great on the uptake.
We have. Like, we were so keen to get out and about.
That's it. We're
back
to the pub.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to the pub.
Jim,
thank you very much for your time. It's been lovely chatting to you, and I suppose given me a great insight into the wheelings and dealings and the way the GAA works. It's not something I'd be overly familiar with, but I suppose we all know how much part of communities GAA is, and we're lucky to have someone with your mindset at the helm of it here in Carlow. So thank you very much for giving your time. Thanks a million, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you.